So Miss Marvel ended yesterday, and with that, I thought it was kind of a perfect opportunity to rank the 7 Disney Plus MCU shows, or the 7 Disney Plus Marvel shows, them being WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, and of course Miss Marvel. I wanted to do this ranking kind of for a while. I was really considering doing it right after Moon Knight, but I just didn't really get a chance. But now it kind of does seem like a perfect time, because now we're not going straight into another Marvel show like we have been for a while. We have a bit of a break now before, I think, next up we technically have I Am Groot, which is some kind of shorts that are coming out at the beginning of August, and then She-Hulk, which is the next main show, starts around the middle of August, which I'm kind of looking forward to. She-Hulk, I think that's going to be really interesting and really cool to see. It's also kind of cool that we've had a bunch of Marvel shows now that have been developing characters that have not already been in the MCU, like Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and now She-Hulk, rather than the first shows all kind of being focused around characters that have already been established and we already know. But yeah, Disney Plus Marvel shows are really kind of crazy in terms of ranking, because I don't think I've seen a single person have the exact same ranking. On Twitter, I've seen people say that Loki is by far the worst show. Other people saying it's by far the best. I've seen the same with WandaVision. I've seen the same with Moon Knight. I've seen the same with pretty much all of it. I think Hawkeye might be the only show I've seen where I don't think I saw anybody hate it, but I don't really think I saw many people absolutely love it either. So it is kind of crazy how different these are. So what I'm trying to say is, please don't dislike the video if this ranking doesn't match yours. Let me know what your ranking is, and let me know why your ranking is the way it is, because with these shows there really does not seem to be kind of a definitive idea for what the top shows are or what the best shows are. Not like with the MCU movies, where we kind of always are mixing and matching the same top 5 or the same top 10. That doesn't seem to be the case at all with the shows. Maybe when we have more shows, kind of the list will start to balance out, but at the moment I think it really is all over the place. But yeah, also if you're not subscribed yet, please do so. It'll really help the channel out. We're hoping to hit 1,000 this year, which will be awesome. But let's get into ranking some Marvel. So in 7th place I have WandaVision, which was the first Marvel show, and I should say that I actually don't dislike any of the 7 shows on this list. I think all of them are at least good, and I had a good time with at least all of them. But some of the bottom ones are a little bit more, I think, mediocre, a little bit more not as great as they could have been, and WandaVision definitely hits that in my opinion. Now, a lot of people say that if you dislike WandaVision, it just means that you don't want Marvel to shake it up and that you just want Marvel to stick to the formula that's been doing. That's not the case at all. I absolutely love that WandaVision was so different and unique, and my favourite parts of WandaVision were when it was different and unique, but I think overall the show was so tonally all over the place. Like after 3 episodes of the Wanda stuff and the Vision stuff, we ended up switching back to the real world, and it felt like a huge kind of, you've been taken out of this world they set up, and it was kind of all over the place. On top of that, I did not like the format of 9 episodes that were really short. Now, WandaVision is the longest of the live action Marvel shows in terms of episode counts. After WandaVision, they all pretty much had 6 episodes, other than What If, but that's on live action. But with WandaVision, the problem is that it didn't even end up having more content because the episodes are so much shorter than any of the other Marvel shows. It does get a little bit longer towards the end, but overall I think that it felt like it was very rushed. It felt like we didn't really get to learn a lot or do a lot. It was really cool to have Wanda's grief be kind of the central part of the show, and it also led into Doctor Strange 2 really well. But overall I think that the show didn't exactly know what it was trying to be, or if it did, I think that the TV stuff, they knew what they were trying to do with that, but they had to put in all of this stuff with like Jimmy Woo, with Darcy, all that, and it just kind of meshed in a way that didn't really work, and it conflicted with each other, and I wasn't really crazy about that. In 6th place, I have Moon Knight, the first Disney Plus Marvel show that focused on a character that was not priorly introduced in the DMCU. And I was really looking forward to Moon Knight, because Moon Knight's a really cool character. I know that like everybody was kind of hoping that Moon Knight was going to be on the level of Daredevil and stuff like that in terms of kind of the gritty, dark content, and in a lot of ways it does feel like it's the darkest of the Disney Plus Marvel shows yet, but it does never reach that Daredevil kind of high, and Daredevil's a pretty high bar to reach. It's kind of, it's not really fair to compare a show like Moon Knight to a show like Daredevil, which has had 30 plus episodes of absolute peak comic book television. But a lot of the stuff that came out before Moon Knight came out, like the advertising that Feige was doing, it was really hyping up Moon Knight, that this was going to be sort of the really breaking point in terms of like Marvel breaking out into the really dark, gritty stuff, and Moon Knight was not that at all. Oscar Isaac was kind of cool as Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, and Jake Lockley next season. Well, kind of this season as well. Khonshu was a really interesting dynamic. I really liked a lot of the characters they introduced. Ethan Hawke's villain was a little forgettable, Harrow, but Ethan Hawke played it so well that I kind of forgive it. And that's kind of a problem that most of these Disney Plus shows have across the board, is that the villains are really weak and let down the show. But Moon Knight, I think, did not reach its full potential. I think it started very, very, very strong, but it ultimately fell into the problem that a lot of these shows have, and it's that 6 episodes is not near enough. They feel like dragged out movies rather than TV shows. And I feel like, I really hope they don't do this with Daredevil, because you can't take Daredevil and make it a dragged out movie. If you're doing Daredevil on Disney Plus, it needs to be a TV show, and I wish they kind of did that with Moon Knight, where they just made it a TV show rather than this movie that feels like it goes on for too long, but still feels rushed at the same time. Overall though, Moon Knight was fun, the costume looks great, I'm really glad that these characters are in the MCU now. I just think that they sort of fumbled it a bit. In 5th place is Hawkeye, and I'd say from this point on, I think all these shows are at least above mid, so above mediocre. Hawkeye was a really fun show, and Kate Bishop is already a great addition to the MCU. Plus, this ended up being the show that brought back Wilson Fisk's Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, and I'm so excited to see what they do with that in the Echo show, which Echo was also a great addition to this. And it was also really cool to delve into Clint and all of this stuff in his family, and a lot of kind of backstory that we haven't really gotten, because up until this point he was the only Avenger with no kind of solo content. This also ties into the Black Widow movie really well, which it's good that the Black Widow movie ties into a Hawkeye show. It makes perfect sense. But I think that Hawkeye also has the problem where 6 episodes is not enough, and the villain issue really lets it down. Now, Kingpin's a great villain, phenomenal, but I don't think that they utilized him near as well as Daredevil did in this. And of course, this is a 6 episode show. Again, saying it's unfair to compare it to Daredevil when Daredevil had so many episodes. But Hawkeye could have done better than what they did. They don't introduce Kingpin until the very end of, I can't remember if it's episode 5 or episode 6, but they reveal him at the end of one of these episodes. I think he's only fully in episode 6, and they reveal him at the end of episode 5, but it's been like a year, so it's kind of hard to remember. But what I remember was being annoyed that they had Wilson Fisk revealed on a picture on a phone, and then we only have him in one episode as the actual full-on villain. That was a huge misstep for me, and that kind of did dampen the whole show, because the Kate Bishop and Yelena stuff is great. Clint is great. They had a lot of really cool one-shots and a lot of really cool unique things that they were doing throughout the show, but the villain thing, it's just really hard to kind of get over, because these shows should have strong villains. I think that everybody can kind of agree that Marvel villains have slightly gotten better, but I don't think the Disney Plus shows yet are on par with current Marvel movies in terms of villains, and that's kind of unfortunate. In 4th place, I have the most recent one, Miss Marvel, and being completely honest, I have been in my head going back and forth between whether I would put this in 3rd place or put this in 4th place, but I'm deciding on 4th for a couple of reasons. So, Miss Marvel, it's been a controversial Marvel show since the first script pages leaked like 2 years ago, because changing her backstory from being an Inhuman, all of that sort of stuff, I shall say that I will try not to spoil Miss Marvel, because I know it's literally just released, or the final just released, but they've changed her backstory. Everybody's kind of known about this since long before the show came out. They changed a lot about the character. Now, it's not really my place to say that I don't mind the changes, because Miss Marvel does not represent me. Like, Miss Marvel is a huge important character to a lot of people because of how she represents them, and how a lot of her backstory and a lot of who she is as a person really does relate to a lot of people. That's not me, so it's kind of not my place to say, oh, well, I don't mind the changes, because it's not me the changes are affecting. I was annoyed she's not an Inhuman because I love the Inhumans, but it's something that I was kind of able to get over myself, because it's not impacting me directly. But I completely understand that for a lot of people this is something you just can't get over, you just can't sidestep away. But for me, the problem with Marvel is that the show kind of forgets what it's trying to be around the midpoint. I thought the first 3 episodes were fantastic, possibly the most consistently good of the Marvel Disney Plus shows yet. I was loving it. I thought it felt so well made, it felt so stylistic, it felt so unique. It felt like there was some serious passion and care put into crafting this show and making it. But then, at the end of episode 3, they just sort of stopped the story dead in its tracks and decided to go into backstory and flashbacks and all that. And that's perfectly fine if this was a much longer show. If this was like a 13 episode TV show, yeah, okay, sure. This is a 6 episode show though, and the episodes aren't even that long. We don't have time to kind of be stopping the story in the middle of its tracks and then delving into backstory and flashbacks and all that sort of stuff. And then by the time we come back to the story, I've kind of already lost the interest, or I've lost the momentum that I had from the first 3 episodes. And that was sort of disappointing to me. Now, Kamala was a great character. I loved kind of the side characters we had. I thought all of that was great. Also slightly tying into Spider-Man No Way Home with how they had some characters from Damage Control in Spider-Man No Way Home be in the part of the Damage Control in Ms. Marvel. That's a really cool connection. It feels connected to the MCU in a way that isn't ham-fisted. It doesn't feel like they're just dropping references to drop them. It does feel like there is a legitimate reason why characters like Kamala and Bruno are so intertwined into the MCU and so connected into it. I just think that this show could have been borderline perfect if it didn't start stumbling in the middle part. And again, this is a problem that could have easily been fixed with more episodes. You make this an 8 episode season or something, and I don't have near as many of those problems as I do with it, which is just really unfortunate. In third place is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I know the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is kind of one of the more controversial of the Disney Plus Marvel shows in a couple ways. For me though, I remember being a little bit underwhelmed after episode 1, but after episode 2, I was thinking, okay, this is finally the sequel to the Winter Soldier that Civil War never really was. And I absolutely loved Civil War, but Captain America the Winter Soldier is my favourite MCU movie by a decent bit. After Avengers Endgame, I was kind of going back and forth, but eventually I was like, no, Winter Soldier is still the best of the movies in my opinion. So, as much as I like Civil War and I really enjoy it, I've always kind of had that little nagging thought in the back of my head that I really would have just liked a proper sequel to Winter Soldier, one that is just true and true a Captain America, a Bucky, a Sam movie that is really following up on the events of the Winter Soldier, one that does feel as kind of, I guess, focused on these characters as Winter Soldier did. And Civil War, this is not to take away from Civil War still did a great job at keeping the focus on the central Captain America characters, but I just think that a full-on sequel to Winter Soldier that didn't have to deal with Civil War and didn't have to deal with the Avengers would have been absolutely excellent. Maybe if we'd gotten that before Civil War, that could have been like the absolute perfect scenario for me. But after episode 2 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I started to think, this kind of feels like the sequel to the Winter Soldier that I've always wanted. I thought that the way that they were handling certain characters, the way that the soundtrack was, the way that the action scenes were, really felt like that show to me. And John Walker, aka USS Agent, was a great addition. He might be my favourite addition to these shows that wasn't in the MCU prior. Not to say that I like the character as a person or anything, I don't. I just think that he is a very interesting character and he brings this kind of moral grey sort of dynamic to the MCU that we haven't really had a whole lot of. Also, I just think that it was a great way to push Sam to finally becoming the Captain America by having this kind of fake shitty Captain America take over. And speaking of that, Sam and Bucky, what they did with the characters, I thought this was excellent. My only kind of real problems with it is that the actual villains of the season, who I'm completely forgetting the name of, the ones who kind of wanted the Flag Smashers, was that what they were called? Anyway, I just thought they were really kind of boring and mediocre and bland, and there was a lot of kind of little things that didn't click as well as they could have, but overall I just really liked this season of this show. I really actually do want to rewatch it, but I think that the show just did a great job at kind of taking elements from the early Captain America movies and really meshing them together to create this sort of unique thing that really does feel like a follow-up and still pushes the character like Sam into becoming Captain America now in the future of the MCU, which I'm so excited to see. Falcon and the Winter Soldier so far feels like maybe the most important of the Marvel Disney Plus shows. I'm sure like Loki is going to be very, very, very important, but we haven't gotten to the point yet where we know Loki is important, whereas on the other hand, Captain America 4 is probably going to be out before any big impact from what Loki has done starts to show up in the MCU, which means that Falcon and the Winter Soldier so far kind of feels like the first show that is kind of integral viewing to the MCU, especially since it's sort of establishing things like US Agent and stuff for the Thunderbolts and whatever they do with that. In second place, I have What If. Now, What If is a little bit of an unfair one because What If has the advantage of not trying to tell an entire movie level story in the span of 6 short episodes. What If has 9 episodes, and more or less each one is telling a different story, and all the stories culminate at the end of the show. But What If was really interesting to me because some of the episodes I wasn't really crazy about. There was one like about Thor being an only child that I didn't really like that much. I think that some of the middle-ish episodes weren't the best, but some of the episodes absolutely blew me away. Episode 4 about Doctor Strange is hands down one of the best things I think that Marvel and the MCU has ever put out. That was an amazing episode. I absolutely loved it. And I think that there was kind of a lot of that, where there was a lot of little episodes that showed up that really were good and really interesting and really gave kind of an insight into different things that we didn't really think about before, and also just the whole Watcher thing and Ultron and all that was great. I absolutely really loved it. I also thought the animation style really mimicking the comics, while it took a few minutes to kind of get used to, it was something that I really kind of came to appreciate by the end of the show. I know a lot of people really don't like what If did, but I think that What If was kind of what the MCU and Marvel needed at this time, which was showing us all these characters in different scenarios and different crazy scenarios, things that the movies can't really do because the movies don't really have time to do, whereas What If is the perfect chance to do it. And in first place, I have Loki. And I'm already expecting to hear a lot of people saying that Loki is by far the worst of the Marvel shows, but I don't know. I thought spectacle-wise, just kind of impact-wise, Loki was by far the biggest and the best of what Marvel Disney Plus has put out. Loki is the one show so far that I think feels very, very, very impactful and feels huge. I think that the other shows, while they feel like stretched out movies, they don't really necessarily feel as high budget or as big as the movies do. Loki, on the other hand, I think perfectly fits that. I also love the soundtrack. I love that they introduced Kang finally. I think that Owen Wilson was great in this. I think that just giving the opportunity for Loki and Tom Hiddleston to kind of mess around through time and just go through different things and also meet other versions of himself was great, and I really enjoyed it. Loki is also, I think, the only Disney Plus Marvel show that I pretty much reviewed the entire show when it was airing. I know I tried reviewing a few of Falcon and Winter Soldier, I reviewed a few of WandaVision, I reviewed a few of What If. The other ones I didn't get a chance to because I was just busy with college and stuff. But Loki is the only one that I made a legitimate effort to review every episode of because I was loving it that much, and I felt like I actually had enough room to talk about it every week. Because that's also another thing with the rest of these Disney Plus shows. I didn't think that enough was happening every week, that I had kind of enough to talk about or enough worth making a review about, which is a problem, you know. These shows should be, each episode should be important, whereas Loki, I did feel like enough was happening every week that I could review it. But that's how I feel about the 7 Marvel Disney Plus shows. Let me know what your ranking would be, if you agree, if you disagree, why you're ranking the way you are. Let me know if you want to see an MCU movie ranking, because after Thor Love and Thunder, I've been kind of thinking about doing one since after Far From Home, because I did some before in the channel, but because there are so many of them, I just kind of didn't talk and just put trailer clips in where I would rank each of the movies. I'm at that point where I don't think I should be doing that, where I think I need to be talking if I'm going to do a ranking. It's just there's 29 movies, so it's a lot, so I kind of only want to do it if there's going to be legitimate interest in it. But let me know about that, and also like, share, subscribe, all of that if you haven't already, and I hope you have a great day.